Well, let me shut the window. Hold on.
Fake. It's completely fake. It's a fake of my actual office.
I have I always try to have the kinds with the books in the background. So
you look smart. You look really smart.
yeah. Well, I wanted to show you the book I'm reading well, I started before yours and then now I'm reading this one. I know you'd appreciate it.
Let's see. Get out of here, sitting. Oh, yes. I mean, it's 698 pages. I have it, but I have not embarked as yet. Also,
Yeah.
I just read.
But the Mark is coming on the podcast. And then, yeah. So, and with, do you know Ileana Douglas?
I do. Yes. She's wonderful.
She's co-hosting because we're friends. So.
Oh, she's great. Yeah, I had just read his, the other book about him, where 150 of his best friends comment on him. I know there'll be a lot of overlapping information, but I love him. He was an idol of mine. He and Elaine May both. They were like my earliest influences in terms of improvisation. And
Elaine May is, I every time I watch the Mathau, every time I watch, I'm just having
a new leaf.
A new leaf. Thank you. I had a senior moment, but every time I just get more. Well, they're both brilliant in that. I mean, they're both so funny in that. Have you seen it recently?
No, I have not.
Watch it again soon because it just gives you another reason to live, just because that movie exists. And
a lot of reasons to live, Adam, but okay.
There are. It's in there, not in the top, 2, but it's. Now let's figure out how are we?
Are we on now? Or
I'm sorry. That's my weird thing. I don't do a hard kind of start. We sort of just. But I should tell people, but I never do, that it's starting. But if somebody were to say something they didn't want to include it, I always take it out. But that never happens.
No, keep the stuff we just talked about. It's primo.
Yeah, and we should tell people after they purchase Odd Woman Out, they get Mark's book too.
Yeah, that would.
But read your book first.
Yeah, read my book first. I think that would be important.
So we're going to talk about your new book, but I got to ask you first or put out there, how distant cousins do we figure we are?
You and me? I don't know. I mean, I've been on 23andMe. Your name has not come up as yet.
How is that possible? Well, I guess, it's interesting how when I was in high school and Fridays came on the air and you became famous on another level, let's say, like as a real star of that show, everyone asked me, are you related to Melanie? I said, yes. No, I said, I wished.
Why not?
I know, but I said, no, we have different, actually our names are spelled differently, but very, very slightly. I just have one extra letter at the beginning. That's the whole thing. So
Robert Chartoff, the late movie producer, became famous for The Gang That Couldn't Shoot Straight, Raging Bull, The Right Stuff,
Rocky,
all the Rocky films.
Raging Bull.
People would ask me if I was related to him, and I'd say he made it completely on his own.
Yeah, I like to think I had something to do with his talent.
Yeah.
But, well, it's funny. My dad's name is Robert Chartoff. So he used to get mistaken a lot for
Bob. Yeah.
And I ended up meeting Irwin Winkler at a film event some years ago, not long ago. He had a memoir actually himself. Yeah. And I told him about that, and it was really nice. We have a nice photo, but anyway, I only brought it up, Melanie, because the whole thing about your being asked about it, because it's taken 40 years to meet you.
Sorry.
But I always
want to reserved. I really am so stuck up. It's really terrible. But we met on Facebook, didn't we?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think I must have reached out. Yes, I did, because of I saw you on there, probably because Richard Kind or somebody, I don't know. And and I said, oh my God, I have to try to connect. And when I heard you had this memoir or the series of essays, is probably even a better way to put it, which collectively is your memoir.
Yes.
I just thought, perfect. Now let's try to do this. And so when you were doing your Facebook live event the other day,
What a mess that was. Yes.
I don't know, I caught kind of the towards the end, you seem, and in the beginning too, and you seem very, very poised, very
It was out of sync, Adam, by 2 or 3
was
seconds.
it? I didn't.
Well, at least in the as it went out live, maybe you saw it
Oh,
later.
I see. Yeah. It's yeah, I've heard a number of people have had headaches with that particular technology, but anyway, not to emphasize that in of itself, but I'm just glad it all fell together, and mostly I'm thankful for the opportunity just to have read your book, because Melanie, you're not only a wonderful writer, you go right to the core with such courage or bravery. I don't want to, I don't want to like, make too much of it, but each chapter I expected to go, I even wrote this down. I expected to go into this book thinking, okay, it's going to be a Hollywood story, you know, girl from Connecticut makes good, and and a career story, and Larry David and Michael Richards and this and that. None of that. Well, it's a little bits are in there about that, but this is not anything really about that. This is about your emotional journey.
It is primarily, I only dropped those names because they were actually in my life and part of my emotional turmoil, at different times. I didn't really bring up any names with whom I hadn't had an emotional, revelatory, enlightening experience. Even Henny Youngman, my experience with Henny Youngman was very enlightening and really confirmed my actual feelings to myself. As I talk about in the book, Adam, I was praised, and a lot of us kids were praised for being other than what we really felt. Children should be seen for what the parents hope their image will be rather than heard for what the kids are really feeling. So I fell into that trap, like a lot of people who end up being comedians and performers, of dissociating from my own actual feelings and body and becoming a performing child. Like Shirley Temple was the ultimate performer of girlhood. And a lot of us said, a lot of parents said, why can't you be like Shirley Temple? So I had a Shirley Temple up my sleeve. I could pull her out. And I had a Gloria Jean I could pull out. I pulled out all the parental favorites of the movies, at that time. But I didn't really have a self for a very long time. I was very fragmented. Every role I played became me for a while. I borrowed great lines from great plays I was doing in Stella Adler's class or on television. And those became part of my integrity and my character. And it wasn't until I did this live late night comedy show called Fridays, where I played the newscaster, much like Jane Curtin, my old colleague from The Proposition, which was an improvisational off-Broadway musical that we did together in the 70s. I played the newscaster, and my name, Melanie Chartoff, was on the screen. And since that character was invited to do talk shows with Merv and Johnny Carson and all these other notables and morning show people, it was important that I have a persona that could go out and speak for me. So I decided to just become the Melanie Chartoff character on the show that has always had a bon mot up her sleeve, and it was kind of be very professional and hold it together against all kinds of odds that made me vulnerable. And that seemed to be a very popular character. So I'm still her now, but I think I've actually become her in a way. Although I have all these other characters still living inside me, all the characters I've ever played are still in there. I can whip them out at any time, like Didi Pickles, who was the mother on the Rugrats for the last 30 years. And her mother, Minky, the Jewish grandmother, who was from the old country. So all those characters are still in there, but now I'm sort of a
Nancy.
oh,
Nance, hello. You don't forget Nance.
very good.
Thank you.
Very good.
Yeah, well, I have to keep
You're the only
myself.
Reagan I've never worked with yet. So everybody else's Reagan wanted to play with me, like Rich Little, Johnny Carson did a Reagan with me.
I saw, I know.
Tried them all. Yeah. So but this amalgamated character became the best package for containing all these different selves. I was like the musical version of Sybil. when I was young. I mean,
Right.
that's what
Well,
I always say.
you mentioned comedian like Rich Little, who I mean, I've just, usually they're not typically comfortable in their own skin, so they hide, if you will, behind. But your book, it sort of comes as a peeling of the onion in a way, over time. Like, your early relationships, whether they were professional or personal, you they sort of help define also who you were to some, right? I mean, there's some really amazing, that amazing chapter with the Greek, uh,
Comedian.
yeah,
Yeah.
and you
What a
really,
desperate character. And I mistook his need for me for love of me. But he was a very selfish person in a way, who said, I love you, I love you, I love you. And I needed to be told that by somebody. And
sure,
yeah, and he
very
was also,
attractive. It's a very attractive, compelling thing to hear.
it is. And he was so funny that I mistook my laughter about him for love of him. You know, people that you laugh at, you may fall in love with from time to time. And I had that bad. I saw funny guys as handsome guys. You know, guys with character were my types. I wasn't interested in the soap opera perfected good looks of a lot of actors I work with. My eye just sort of slid off those faces like they were Teflon. I
Well,
mean, crap.
I bank on that. I've made I've had a wonderful few relationships just banking on.
Good for you. Good for you. You have character.
um the well, again, the book is called Odd Woman Out. Can you talk a little bit also about how you put the book together? Did when you were these the were essays that were written for various publications, magazines, what have you, right?
Well, were actually stories I performed,
Poet
for quite
story
a
type of
while.
slams, that kind of thing.
Well, like Comedy Central had a show that they did every week, and I did a number of those. And then I did it as a musical. Joshua Tree Comedy Festival commissioned me to write a one-woman musical, so I did them there.
So you
And then
develop these chapters, or you develop these stories. I mean, they're from your life, of course, but you develop them narratively through these.
as stage pieces. And then I thought it would be a movie, so I wrote a whole movie whose script is still going around. I actually shot 20 minutes of it with me in the lead as an old woman. And but then a literary agent saw me do these shows, and she said, this has literary heft and it has spiritual meaning. I think it's a book, and I think you should write it. And she stuck with me until I got through. It took me about a year to assemble it. And then I had an editor who gave me an order for it that seemed cathartic, And it wasn't until I met and married my wonderful husband that I really had a happy ending, and which really justified the book. I came into a love of myself, partly because of writing. When I was in my 50s, and I became this amalgamated entire multifaceted person rather than a fragmented person. And I got more comfortable with my imagination. I love working in ensembles with gifted actors. I've been really fortunate to work with some of the greatest actors in the world. And but I found that I could channel my imagination safely myself in my 50s. And I started writing a lot. I've written essays for many different books and analogies. Chicken Soup for the Soul, I've written for 3 of those, and I'm due for a 4th. And I fell in love with my own mind, which was my enemy for such a very long time.
The this the story that comes through the through line is your relationships with your parents, uh, and your family dynamic, which was like is a complicated one.
Kind of
That's
like an
not,
opera, kind of like an opera most of the time. Very high intensity, very loud energy in that house.
yeah. Before you mentioned being funny and how that played into the dynamic, and I think you're right at the beginning of your Facebook. I'm glad I rewatched the beginning of that, because I'm reminded that you really got into showbiz because you knew you were funny. You used humor and being funny as a way to help keep your parents happy and less stressed out, which was not going to be good for you and your sister. They were
Oh,
too stressed out.
we
Yeah.
wanted to survive our childhood, and it seemed that being funny pulled us all together.
Right.
If my father's sense of humor was much more mean-spirited and kind of black comic, it still made him happier to be mean and funny, made him happier. And if he was happy, we were all much happier. So we played along.
What might your father have thought about Donald Trump? To bring
Don't
up a
think he would have been a fan. My father was a
oh, he
liberal
would
in all
still.
senses of the word. Yeah, very egalitarian. He was a Humanist, and the Humanist poem that he quoted all the time was, whenever he spoke to people who were very religious, Jewish or otherwise, he'd say, "I drew a circle which took him in, heretic. Oh no, I drew a circle which shut us out, heretic, rebel, a thing to flout. But love and I had the wit to win. I drew a circle which took them in." And so his philosophy was to find the common ground in all religions and stop the antagonism between religions because of different perceptions. And I shared that belief with him, still do, with my late dad, about being inclusive rather than
Hmm.
exclusive and egocentric as a religion. We are the chosen people to ourselves, but other groups are their chosen people too, and they choose to believe in a and describe a phenomena in a different way than we describe that phenomenon. So
And many, yeah, many Jews would have preferred not to be chosen because it's with a lot of the attention that we get as chosen people or perceived as chosen people is negative attention,
absolutely,
right? Even right now, it's
oh, it's getting ugly again. It's really getting
yeah. Um, but also um, I was going to say that your need, there was an emotional. Um, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I kind of, if please correct me if you feel that I'm using the wrong term here to describe it. But seemed like there was some emotional abuse going on as a young girl or a young woman emerging as a young woman, and the first opportunity you had to get out, you took. And your mom, if I'm not giving away too much, but let me know, it felt very abandoned.
yes,
And so that was a cause of a lot of friction over the years with you, though there was a lot of healing, and which is you wrote about very beautifully, I thought. But
thank you.
but this is something I think a lot of people can relate to. When your mom, you'd think you would want your mom to say, yes, go find a healthier place.
Yes.
And your mom stuck it out in a very unhealthy, unhappy relationship for a very long time.
Very long time. When she finally left my father after 42 years, I said, "Mom, why now?" And she says, enough is enough.
Enough is enough, right?
I thought 42 years, what endurance. But mom is still going strong. She's going to be 97.
Oh, okay, okay. I
Yeah,
didn't realize she was still around. That's beautiful.
still around, and she kept working on herself. I got to hand it to her to get out of that codependent mindset that she had. She still carries the trauma of my father. No
Sure.
matter how much therapy she has, that'll never leave her body. But I have to say we have reached a really wonderful reckoning in our relationship together. We love each other very much. Um, she's had a stroke. I'm very much hoping she'll be able to return to her apartment, which she loves, that my sister and I bought her in this assisted living facility. It's been her happiest time, her last 20 years. Uh,
Where is she now then?
she's in the hospital at the
She is.
assisted living center because
Okay,
she had a
that's
stroke
good.
in her leg, and I'm just hoping she can get back on her feet again. We're really concerned. It's a turning point. But I haven't seen her in over a year. It's been really hard for so many
I
of us at long
my,
distance from our folks. And
yeah, no,
yours?
it's is she able to get on is she able to use technology at all or just get on the phone?
Just the phone,
Yeah.
but it's something. And of course, she has to have her technology of hearing aids in
Oh, right, of
her,
course.
and there's so many layers of technology between us now, but at least we have some.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so, you know,
Um,
who are your parents?
well, my mother's in a nursing home. Sad. It's a little sad. My mom has got very advanced dementia, sadly. So, and it's very sad because she was such a um, just an enormous amount of energy and life, and just really, I don't know how to describe her and do her justice, because she just lived life, and she was very loving and incredibly fiercely loyal mother,
Oh,
maybe to his fault.
oh,
You know, one Venn diagram we have probably is boundaries. We're Jewish. We grew up in Jewish homes, so boundaries are often an issue. But I wouldn't have traded her, for any other mother. And sadly, she has the worst, almost like the worst punishment is for years she's been laying in a very non-communicative. So, and it's very difficult because getting to see her is hard. So, and she's been vaccinated, but and then my dad unfortunately died last spring. So he was, from COVID and a couple of other complications.
oh, I'm so sorry, Adam.
Yeah, it's a story, but yeah, I miss him. I miss him. He was not a happy guy without my mother. That was sort of the beginning. It's it's not an unusual story when
I know
one
there's
one.
many tragedies being written right now, and
That's right. Yeah,
there's never going
yeah.
to be a loss of drama in our society now.
I feel good though that at least now, at least it feels like we turned a corner, perhaps I mean, I know it's still, we've got a long way to go in this country is finding true compassion and love for one another. We've gone through an extended period without it, so, but I feel better, since at least since January,
Yes,
you know,
yes.
um, but you mentioned before, and this is interesting because I think people, when they read your book, they do see a person's journey to feeling a sense of authentic self.
Yeah.
And yet and maybe this is a little challenge for you, or I'm challenging you a little bit. You tie up a lot of that, admittedly, with marriage, with that, as though that's some sort of affirmation or something. Like, in other words, I know Stan sounds like this amazing guy and such a great partner for you and so supportive and loving. And I was so glad you found him. But, especially after those latter chapters and your dad, and very moving. But what if he hadn't been in your life? Or what if you hadn't met Stan? Would you
Well,
have been able to find happiness ultimately
yeah,
without somebody?
I was saying to you that in my 50s, I began to fall in love with my brain when I started writing.
Mhm.
And I began to become more self-reliant and be able to spend Saturday nights by myself without any qualms, enjoying the fact that I had no commitment to anyone. I didn't have any entrapment or
Right.
obligation, and was flying really free in my 50s, and began to really see it as a joy, solitude as a joy rather than a punishment. And so I flew kind of high in my 50s. My writing, wrote a musical, a two-character musical about a therapist and a patient, and it was called Fine Lines. It was put on in the Hudson Theater here in Hollywood. John Savage was my co-star. He has a beautiful voice. John Savage was in Deer Hunter.
Oh, I
And
know John Savage, sure.
yes, and he has a beautiful voice, and he played this psychologist, and it was about a psychologist who falls in love with a patient who's so damaged she can only perform her feelings, which was very much like me. And so the therapist has to learn to sing and dance and perform in order to heal her, ends up falling in love with her, but is unable to reveal that to her because he doesn't want to ruin her therapy. So it's a very moral therapist, a very moral therapy story, and a very beautiful and poignant story. And it has not yet been picked up. I'm a little too old to play it, but it is a perfect vehicle for a male and a female who are flexible in their 40s or 50s to play. They go from young, they age over a 20 to 30-year period. So
Hmm.
it'll be a joy for some younger people, like maybe in their 30s or 40s, to do. So I began to feel pretty damn good about myself. And at that point, I thought I have so much to share. I have a beautiful home that I bought myself. I have my own money. Thank you, Rugrats and other television
Yeah.
shows. And I could take or leave love, but I knew I wanted to have what my mom and dad didn't have. I wanted to succeed at love. And I had a lot of near misses. I think I mentioned in the book that I started on J Date in my 50s. It was not a novel and radical. And I had three different short relationships, all very promising, all crushingly disappointing. One was with a guy who loved cats. How could you not love a guy that loves animals, right? And after a very intense relationship, I started to notice that whenever his feral cat scratched or bit me, he would comfort the cat instead of me. And it became very clear that the choice between the cat and me, I would not be prioritized. So that sort of had to
Yeah.
fizzle out. It was very sad. Then I was involved with a really classy guy in the music business, very smart, very erudite and
Right.
knowledgeable. It was going great until he was parking his Land Rover one day and backed into the car behind us and then
Remember this one?
hit the car behind us. And he said, "Do you think I should just take off?" And
Yeah.
it was like right
Yeah.
then his character was clear.
Mm,
And the third was with a really terrific guy, very chivalrous, classy guy, very protective. And a few months in, he got kidney failure and then was put on a list for a donation. And I had to sort of just grab my kidneys and move away
didn't he
from.
know, he knew this going into the relationship, right? That he needed a
I
kidney,
think
right?
he might have had inklings, but he didn't want to tell me about that if it didn't become more
Yeah.
difficult or dangerous. And at a certain point, I said, "Why didn't you tell me this before?" He says, "Well, I really didn't know." The worst
Okay. But it does give new meaning to the match, the term match.com, right?
thing.
It's like if you're a match.
Exactly.
Oh,
I kind of took my kidneys out of the relationship, but I continued to stay. And when he had his transplant and the kidney was rejecting him, I gave it a name, Sydney, and I'd have him put the cell phone up to the kidney because he was on dialysis for quite a while with the replacement kidney. And I would cheerlead, "Sydney, go, 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 go." And it finally did come to life in his body, and he's okay.
oh,
Yeah.
Sydney the kidney.
Yes, Sydney the kidney.
Well
And
said.
then
Well
I took
done.
a long break before I bothered sullying my imagination again with another's imagination. I didn't want the contagion of love in my life for quite a
Right.
while. And in my 60s, I said, "What the hell? There ain't much time left. And I want to travel. I want to travel so I can say, oh, look to someone I love. Look at that." So that we can have a shared ecstasy about the world. So I found him.
And
But
I'm glad
you
you
have to read the book, to find that out. You have to read the book.
yeah. Well, I want to make sure people know because we've divulged quite a few things here, but it's not the
That ain't the half of
these
it.
are almost MacGuffins because really it's all about how your emotional like each part of each one of these anecdotes and chapters. It's really how you write about it, and it's not necessarily how the chapter ended per se, but like again the emotional journey, which I took a lot out of because I really expected, oh, this is a funny lady and I'm sure I'm going to just laugh all the way through, which I did, but I also really got emotionally caught up, and I definitely teared up at the chapter with your mom and getting closer to her and when she left, and then with your dad. Again, I'm kind of helping giving away a lot, but I think it's almost beside the point. It's in the writing of it, and between the lines in a way. Um, but
Well, I'm so glad you were touched by it. That
yeah,
means
very
a lot
touched.
to me. I mean, I think the purpose for writers is, sure, we want to sell a lot of books. I hope that happens. But you're dealing with an audience of one. It's a very pure relationship between a writer and a reader. I want to touch, whereas I used to touch big audiences of millions, I really feel secure in letting someone else being touched be enough, be the audience that I need. And if I have enough souls like you who feel they get meaning from the book and maybe some encouragement, then I'll have done my job. No matter how many books sell, I will have touched people.
I appreciate that, and I hope you guys get to travel again. And
Oh, yeah.
we
Yeah,
will soon.
that's been a joy. And I never thought I'd see as much of the world as I'm already seeing. I had traveled for work mostly,
Sure.
which was really fun. But you always had a purpose in being there. Being purposeless, just going out to learn in the world and be knocked out by the phenomena of the way different people live is just the biggest ecstasy. It's been worth waiting for. It's wonderful. And I hope the world reconstitutes itself in a way that it can feel joy again and welcome tourism and travelers as something other than scavengers.
Right.
Um, I'm really hoping we get back to some semblance of normal soon.
Um, Well, this has been great. And I wanted to let you know, though, that I had to read your book on my computer. It wasn't my favorite way. What I would love to somehow arrange is to get a hard copy. And, with my distant cousin from another mother, I don't know what's the expression. I've owned our cousinship, whether
Oh,
you have or not, because
all
our
right.
names are essentially the same. So that's,
I looking back at my sister just sent a genealogy of our family name, and it was something like Chertoff and Tschgerto. And I met with Bob Chartoff. He became a good friend, and his
right.
name had been a bastardization of another long multisyllabic Russian name. So I
Ours
don't
too.
know what you would find out from your grandparents' birth certificates or marriage certificates, but you might find the same if you're the same name as my origin name, then
Yeah.
we're related. And if
Well, or from the same, I don't know about village, but region. Um,
Belarus,
yeah,
Austria,
Belarus.
Belarus, and that was my grandfather's area of origin. My grandmother was from Austria, but I bet we are related in some fashion.
It makes me feel just a little bit better and closer to you. Uh,
I feel the
and
same.
yeah,
Thank you.
and I want to, on a shallow level, you look fantastic. I just wanted to
Oh,
let you know you're beautiful.
thank
My,
you.
I was always thought you were very fetching, to say the least, when I was a teenager and you were on Fridays. So I was only too tempted to say we were when people would ask, to lie. But um, anyway, I
No,
want people to read the book. If
you're
you
a nice
could,
boy. You're too young for me, but you're a very nice boy.
if things don't work out with Stan,
Yeah, I'll
it
get
might be,
back to you.
but I'm sure they will, unfortunately for me. Uh,
And since you just got the audiobook, or did you get the ebook?
no, they
Uh,
sent me a digital copy, so it's like a PDF or something. So,
Okay. So
which
I can send you this bookmark that you can later use as a coaster, autographed and personalized to anyone who writes me at playdate444@gmail.com. I will be happy if you send proof of purchase to send you this a postcard bookmark, a postcard bookmark coaster. A coaster
it's not gonna.
postmark plate.
I understand what you're
Yeah,
saying, but I'm not gonna put. I'm not putting a drink on top of that.
yeah.
It's
Okay.
gonna go on my refrigerator, or you know, maybe what. Okay, so if I what do I do? Right? What do
Just
I do?
send it to me at Playdate, or I can, just write to me at Playdate, give me your mailing address and I'll send it to you.
A play date.
Playdate444@gmail.com.
Oh, play date 444.
At gmail.com is
Oh,
my address for that.
I got you. I got you now. Okay, I got you. Yeah, because okay, I'll do that. And then I'll get a copy eventually. Because I like to have it with, and then I'll stick that in there.
Okay.
That'll be a nice way to do that.
It's really
And
fun shelf.
and
Maybe
she do
I'll
if
be
you
in that very room there, right on that wall or something.
well, the books, just so you know, there. Oops, you're getting a little bit more, but I have a
Uh,
lot right there. I've got some in the other room. I've got, and out that window is never ending inches of snow that keeps dumping. I don't what
where
I
are
don't
you?
huh?
Where are you?
Well, I'm just north of New York. I moved up here, last summer to escape all of the stress of living in the city, and I'm about 100 miles north of New York in the Hudson Valley. It's beautiful, but
Oh,
there's so much snow this year.
yes, I
But I
know.
love it. It's beautiful. I go for long walks. It's nice.
I miss snow. I actually miss it.
I'm sure.
1 or 2 days a year.
Yeah, it's usually about the right amount. This has been terrific. Thank you so much, and good luck with the book. And and hopefully we'll have a chance to do this again sometime.
All right. I hope so. Take care, Adam.
You too.
All right. Bye.